Hey, what's up, guys? It's Will here. I'm going to do predictions for Cage Warriors 113 from now it's in Manchester. I was kind of contemplating whether I was going to do this card because I still don't know whether it's going to go ahead, but I did say in the community page earlier on in the week there that I was going to make predictions for this. There's been some fights that have dropped off since, unfortunately. Like I said, I'm not fully optimistic that this fight card goes down because I think there's going to be a big announcement in the UK tomorrow regarding some things, what's going to happen. But Cage Warriors are still pushing ahead. They're trying to make these fights happen, which much respect to them for that. So I'm going to make a couple of predictions for a couple of fights, but they're going to be very, very quick. I've just been watching fights there regarding it. But yeah, it's a shame that some of the fights that fell off because there was some good scraps. But there is some guys on here who, if you're new, or if you know the MMA scene here in the UK, you might recognise some of these names. But like I said, I just want to give you guys some content. So yeah, so I'm only going to go through like 4 or 5 of the fights that I've managed to kind of look at. There's a whole load of fights, but I've not been able to kind of watch them all. The first one I'm going to look at is actually the guy I've just been watching here was Jamie Richardson. Um, as he faces off against Matthew Bonner. Both guys have kind of close to really having a 500 record. You've got a 6-5-1 record from Bonner, and you've got Jamie Richardson with an 8-5 record, who's coming off a couple of wins over Phil Wells. Literally just watched the fight there with Hakam Foss, where it was really back and forward. They were throwing heavy leather, big counters, then eventually just the pace of Foss kind of dwindled a little bit. Jamie Richardson really put it on him and started really banging it out towards the end of that second round and knocked him out. It was a vicious knockout. If you see it, the mouthpiece come flying out. Hakam Foss is going kind of backwards across the cage, and it was kind of like a delayed knockout. It was a weird knockout. But Jamie Richardson's got big power. You can get him through body shots. He kind of wilts a little bit through that. He's only 22, 23 years old, so still a young guy. John, who I do the MMA huddle with, did an interview with him there. I just like his power. Bonner's not really. I think if he was going to win this fight, he's going to really want to take it to the ground and try and get it to decision. Where Jamie Richardson is really going to come forward and look to stop the fight. And I made a little bet on Jamie Richardson. He's an underdog, so I got him at plus 110. I've got a bit of a kind of degenerate action. Some betting action on some Cage Warriors fights here, but I've got Jamie Richardson there. Perry Goodwin against Steve Amable. I haven't really looked too much into that, but I like Steve Amable in that one there especially. I think he's minus 140 over here in the UK. I think he's fought far better caliber opposition. Has to be careful because Perry Goodwin does bang a little bit. He can throw some heavy leather. And we've seen that in the fight with Alexander Jakobsen, who's a, like I say, if you watch Cage Warriors like I do, he's a guy that you know through the European scene. He's quite a tough guy with a fairly decent record. Lost to Rhys McKee, who is probably going to be in the UFC at some point this year. Um, so yeah, also for I should have mentioned this at the start. I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I was going to be doing a top 10 fights all the time. I might still do that, but I'm also going to be doing my look into the futures thing, which I've been meaning to do since the start of the year. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. So keep an eye out. But getting back to the fight, I mean, Perry Goodwin. Goodwin over Jakobsen, lost to Rhys McKee, which I fully expected, and then he beat Alakozai last time out back in October, I think it was last year. I like Steve Amble. He's coming off a loss to Mads Barnell. He's a guy that fairly decent record, 14-6. A little bit not a kind of young gun anymore. He's kind of like 32, 33 years old, but he's a kind of staple of the kind of Cage Warriors circuit there. And I just like him to win the fight. I think he's just got more tools to go the 15 minutes. I think if he avoids a big shot, he wins the fight. Coming off a win over Aiden Stephen before the Mads Burnell fight, which Aiden Stephen's a Scottish kid that I know of. Decky, a guy from Ireland. So he's a guy that can really go hard for the 15 minutes. I just like him to kind of do that, avoid the big shots and win over a 50-minute span. So I've got Steve Amable for the win there. The next one up, I've got Nathan Jones against David Bear. I didn't watch any fights. I know who David Bear is. I know who Nathan Jones is because Nathan Jones has been around for a long time. Probably edge David Bear in that one, but I'm not going to really make a prediction. But the bet of mine, I think, is fairly decent. So if you're looking for a bit of action, maybe David Bear on that side. Next up, Mason Jones against the SBG hunter, Joe McColgan. If you've been on Twitter probably in the last year, you've seen me probably talk about Mason Jones. I'm a big fan of this kid. really good up and coming fighter coming out of Wales. Got himself the opportunity to fight for a title here. He's a guy that I was thinking he might make the UFC this year, and I still think that he might, but I don't think it would do him any harm to kind of stick around in Cage Warriors and kind of blossom into a kind of better fight. I think he's 24 years old, obviously fighting out of Wales, but he goes to Team Alpha Male out there in California, and he's been kind of getting a good camps out there. But the guy's a very good boxer, good hands. Defensively speaking, I think he gets hit a little bit too much for my liking. I think if he was to go to the UFC, that could be exploited. But he's a big, strong kid at 155. He comes from a judo background. I think he's a black belt in judo, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Very strong wrestling, like big suplexes, big, like when he gets takedowns, it's a big thud on the canvas. And he's just a kid that I've really loved watching come through Cage Warriors, and I think he's got better every fight he's been on. He's moved on to different kind of caliber opposition. In Cage Warriors, he's went from Con Mandé, who's a kind of a regional guy here in Europe, very tough. Casper Formella, he was getting blitzed in that first 2-3 minutes of that fight. Some big body kicks, a couple of big shots up top, but he turned it around. Some big knees against the cage, got that fight stopped. Then he faced Donovan Desme, who's another guy, very tough, hard-nosed guy from out here in Europe. Started off that fight a little bit slow. As the fight went on, his grappling really came in. Big suplex takedowns and got into a kind of dominant position. Won the fight through there. And then his last fight against Alexei Mantekivi, just a really good performance all around. He's very dangerous with his spin kicks, very dangerous with his boxing, attacks the body very well. Good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling. Overall, he's a really good kid. I just think he needs a little bit more time to kind of season in Cage Warriors. But he's got a big opportunity here against Joe McColgan, who, I mean, he's called SBG Hunter. He's a guy that's kind of obviously targeted those guys in the past, and especially with the win over Peter Queally, very early on in his career. Like, he goes for the kind of bigger names. That's what he has done. If you look at early on in his career, he was supposed to face Kiefer Crosby, who's a guy who's in Bellator that does well. Obviously beat Peter Queally. Arnold Quiro's another guy who, a kind of tough European guy that if you know the kind of European scene a little bit, you know how tough he is. Sean Carter's another guy, tough kind of English guy from the UK over here. Losses to Jai Herbert. The fight with Mehdi Ben Lakhtar was a great fight, a majority draw. If you've got the opportunity to watch that, go back and watch it. But he's coming in here on short notice. I like Mason Jones here. I think he can win the fight on the feet. I think he can win with his grappling. I think his grappling's going to be where he wins this fight. So I've got Mason Jones. I might take him by submission in that one because he's a big, strong kid once he gets on top. But yeah, I've got Mason Jones, and expect this kid to be in the UFC within the next 18 months at least. It might even be this year. It might be towards the end of this year. So Mason Jones for the win there for me. Moving on, we've got Paddy Pimblett against Decky Dalton. I like Paddy Pimblett in the fight. Decky's coming in here, I think, very short notice. He only fought a couple of weeks ago. Kind of older guy fighting out of Ireland, who probably didn't really think he'd maybe get to the kind of bigger stage of fighting on a Cage Warriors, or I think he fought in Bama once back in Brave FC, he did. But losses to like Peter Queally, who I've obviously mentioned. Jonathan Brookins is a guy you'll probably recognise through the UFC, winning the Ultimate Fighter and stuff. But he's a guy that fights in the regional scene in Ireland, a very kind of tough guy, but nothing really kind of stands out. Where Paddy Pimblett's a kind of a big name in Cage Warriors, a big name in kind of England with the MMA scene. You probably know about this kid. People were saying he should have been in the UFC years ago. I thought that at one point as well, but he's kind of petered out a little bit. He's got too big for like 145, but now at 155, I think he could grow into that division. I think he had a little bit kind of problems initiating himself into that division. He was against Soren Bak. That was a tough fight. He's had a really kind of bad 18 months of kind of luck to kind of getting fights. People have been coming out, like the Desme one fell through twice, the Martinez one that was on this one. Joe Giannetti completely botched his weight cut, and he called that there and then. So he's not had a fight in a long time, 18 months at least. But he was the former Cage Warriors 145 champion, win over Juliana Rosa, lost to Adnan Armani, who's in the UFC. like he's got a lot of support coming out of Liverpool. This guy can sell events in Liverpool and sell at a fair amount of tickets over there. Like I say, I like him in this spot here. I think he's if he gets him to the ground, which I think he will submit him, and I've got him via submission in round number 2. And the main event of this card is Darren Stewart against Bartosz Fabinski. So it's a UFC fight that headlines a Cage Warriors card. So yeah, it's a shame that the fights that fell off, because I thought that if the fights would have stayed on, it would have made for a really good card. It's a little bit light, but they're still trying to put on a card, so fair play to them for that. You got Darren Stewart, who's really kind of found his stride recently. He's a former Cage Warriors champion. Coming off a couple of wins, he obviously lost to Shabazian, beat Bevon Lewis, and then got a big win, big-ish win over Darren Win. Even though he got taken down 5 or 6 times, find his way back to his feet and managed to kind of win a split decision in that one, and it was a close-ish fight. But then you've got Fabinski. I think he's moving up from 170 to 185, and this guy's really only got one way of winning the fight, and that's through his grappling. And he could do it against Darren Stewart, but for the simple reason that we've seen him taken down multiple times by Shabazian, multiple times against their own win. But on the feet, he's got nothing for Darren Stewart. So it's whether if Darren Stewart stops takedowns, he wins his fight all day long. The betting line in earlier on I seen was like plus 240, plus 250 or something for Bartosz Fabinski. I was like, ooh, that's maybe a little bit high. Especially over a 3-round fight where if he was to get him down just a couple of times in those rounds, he could maybe easily win the rounds through that. But yeah, if I would have got that line, it might have been a little bit different. Had a little poke at him, but I like Darren Stewart in this one. I think he can knock out Fabinski once he starts to fade a little bit. But like I say, a little bit sceptical if this fight will go. Fight card will go ahead, but I thought I'd just give you some predictions, get something out there for you guys. I'm going to be trying doing some bits and pieces, like looking to the future. I'll be doing probably maybe a little bit of Mason Jones, Saladini Parnasse. So yeah, I was trying to find some value, some underdogs, and like I said, I've got Jamie Richardson as an underdog, and there might be a couple other guys in the undercard, but like I say, I've not really had the time to kind of look into that. So that's my predictions. Quick fire predictions, not too much, but it's a little bit something out there for you guys for Cage Warriors 113. Until tomorrow, if you join me for the live stream, all the very, very best. Take care, and I'll see you soon.